just so you know. And good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have you here for our first Exploring Main Street Interchange of 2025. Next slide, Zachary. Again, just a quick reminder for meeting controls. You got your chat, your reactions. If you have any questions as we go throughout, feel free to pop those in the chat. Camera and mic on and off, just good to know. But yeah, you guys should be pretty familiar with this. Next slide, please. A quick overview of our agenda. We're going to do some introductions here in a second, do a quick reminder on some upcoming grant opportunities through Virginia Main Street. And then we're very excited to hear from our guest speaker, Christina Craybill with Berryville Main Street. And they're going to give us some updates on what they've had going on recently. And then an opportunity for discussion and reflection, some reminders on some stuff we have coming up in the next few months, and a chance for final thoughts and to kind of get all our stuff in order. Next slide, please. So we're going to start off with a quick roll call. Please put in the chat your name, where you're joining from, your community, and one project or activity that you'll be tackling in 2025 that is exciting for you guys.
Do we just start?
Yeah, you can put it in the chat
Okay.
if you like, or if you want to just say it out loud, that's awesome too.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess since I'm already talking, I'll just say it out loud. Hi, I'm Sarah Mosley with the town of Lovettsville. One project that our town is excited about that we started last year is called Lovettsville Full of Hearts. And that is where we've partnered with our local elementary school, specifically the first grade class, and they make heart artwork that we then display throughout the town in our brick and mortar businesses. And this year we are including our civic organizations in this townwide project, and they will be decorating the trees in our town center with hearts and decorations that exemplify their mission, as well as some local food fundraising donations.
Awesome. I love getting the kids involved. That sounds great. Let's see, we also got some chat people. We have Mary Zirkle from Town of Bedford, and they are excited about their comprehensive plan underway. That's always exciting to update that. We also have Savannah Frazier with the Town of New Market, and they are planning to complete a mural in the downtown this year. That's super exciting. What's the mural going to be, Savannah?
Hi there. We're not exactly sure. We will be putting out a call to muralist coming up in the next month or so. And then we have some ideas for design, but no set one yet.
Okay, awesome. Wonderful. We have Deirdre from Tuano working on expanding their historic district. That's exciting. We also have Randall Lynch from Town of Lawrenceville, and they are working on their social Saturdays, food truck, and vendor events. Oh, those are good. Doing some more painting. All right, anyone else that wants to share what they are excited about for 2025? I'm not seeing anyone. I think we can go ahead, Zachary. Oh, wait, one more. We have Reagan with the Town of Wise, and construction is underway on our food truck incubator project. Definitely excited about that. That sounds very cool. A lot of food truck stuff happening.
All right. So each year, DHCD and Virginia Main Street offer some exclusive grant opportunities to our Virginia Main Street communities to help you all fund your projects. So some of the projects that you've already listed are probably eligible for this grant. Active Exploring Main Street Communities are eligible for the Community Vitality Grant and, if funding permits, the Financial Feasibility Grant. Please note that active means that your EMS documentation is up to date and your annual report has been submitted. Let's go and talk about both of these grant opportunities individually. So the Community Vitality Grants max out at $15,000 and are intended to assist communities and organizations in achieving long-term downtown revitalization goals. CVGs require a 3-to-1 match, and applications will open on February 3rd. Financial feasibility grants are intended to address white elephant buildings in your Main Street district. Priority for these grants are given to advancing Virginia Main Street communities. So if funding permits, applications will open for EMS communities on April 28th. These grants max out at $25,000 and no match is required. Next slide, please. For more detailed information about the Virginia Main Street grants, please refer to the Fiscal Year 26 Grant Manual, which is linked here. Additionally, Virginia Main Street hosted a How to Apply webinar earlier this month, and we suggest that you revisit the recording of the webinar, which is also linked here if you weren't able to attend. If you are interested in submitting a grant application, you're strongly encouraged to work with your assigned PA to make sure that your status as an EMS community is active and that your organization is registered in DHCD's CAMS. That's our centralized application management system. It's what we use to administer all of our grants. Additionally, your PA can also work with you to identify a viable project and compile a competitive application. Next slide. So if you're wondering what types of projects would be eligible for a Community Vitality Grant, there are 3 examples linked in the grant manual. And today we'll hear from Berryville Main Street's Board President, Christina Craybill, who will share a 4th example. Berryville Main Street, along with the town of Berryville, recently completed an alleyway revitalization project that was supported by a Community Vitality Grant. As you'll hear from Christina, Berryville was able to transform a well-worn alley into a new public gathering space that reflects their community's spirit and historic charm. Christina will also share some of the other fun and exciting successes that Berryville Main Street has recently celebrated. So at this time, I'll hand the mic off to Christina, our guest speaker.
Thank you, Blair. It's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Christina, and I have been a resident of Berryville since 2011, and also have been a business owner here in the community for 14 years. Recently, I did close my business due to ongoing family needs, but I have remained involved in our community through being the president of Berryville Main Street. So I look forward to sharing with you what is happening in our community. Next slide. So our organization, Downtown Berryville Incorporated, was founded in 1988, and we became a Main Street organization in 1992. Our current population of our community is 4,900 persons. We've had 2 to 3 newer building kind of suburb areas of Berryville where they're allowing what they call realistic growth to occur in our community. And we currently serve as the county seat of our community. Next slide, please. So we are at this time a 100% volunteer-led organization that's dedicated to the revitalization of historic downtown Berryville. We work in partnership with the town of Berryville and the Clark County governments to help foster economic development and community engagement in historic downtown Berryville. And you may be wondering, it's kind of an elephant in the room. I'm just going to bring it out in the open. So we lost our accreditation following an incident with the last paid director of our organization embezzled funds. And it really took a lot of trust out of our organization. So I returned to the organization as president. 2 years ago to help rebuild the organization, and I'm happy to report that we have successfully reestablished many important partnerships in our community. But we're not at the point yet of having a paid director, but that is something we're working towards. Next slide. So this is the stabilizing team that we have gathered around us to help make this possible. And as you all know, team can make or break anything. And I'm very happy with the team that is makes up Berryville Main Street at this time. All of us are business owners and all of us are town residents. So we're all very invested in this community. And our mayor, who's pictured with the flag picture, he has been very involved with Berryville Main Street and being a strong support, which we highly value. Next slide. So in 2024, we held 26 events in our community. Now, half of those are Music in the Park concert series that happens June through early September. Every Friday night, a free concert in the Rose Hill Park. That makes up half our events. But the other events have mostly been tried and true events in our community. The biggest change this past year for us was we decided to rename an event that's been in our community for 20 some years, called the Berryville Yard Sales. And this event is loved by the locals, but some of the newer residents are like, they cringe when they hear that word. So I've been advocating for years, we just need to change the name. It's not the event, change the name. And finally, this past year, we decided to do that. We renamed the event the Big Flea, and our attendance doubled in the spring. And our vendor interest, we now have vendors coming from 4 or 5 states away. So it's been a huge success. It's brought a lot of new business. A number of our local businesses, our brick and mortar businesses, reported new sales goal, breaking their sales records in a day. And so it was a very, very popular, it's become our biggest event now. So that's been the highlight of this past year. Next slide. So in 2024, we had 3 projects that were occurring in our downtown. The first is we launched a program to find local organizations or individuals who wanted to adopt a planter that lines our main street. We have about 26 of them. And we were successful in that, and the planters were just absolutely beautiful this year, in spite of the drought. I mean, they looked spectacular. And so that really added the beautification aspect of the downtown. The second project we worked on, we lease our office space from the town of Berryville, and they wanted to rehab part of our upstairs where our office is to create a dedicated hallway to our bathroom. They also wanted to create a conference room for us that we could rent out as an additional income option. So the middle picture is the conference room that we now have available upstairs that is available for rent, and we use it as well for our own meetings. But the third project was the Hogan's Alley revitalization project that Blair mentioned earlier. So next slide, please. So this revitalization project has been kind of in the works for 20 some years. The initial vision was to transform this space from just a neglected, kind of scary, I've had people say I was too scared to walk in that space kind of experience, to providing a beautiful space that could be used for events and so on. So one of the biggest challenges we had was the town had with this alley and why it came into being as an alley. At one time, it held a building. There has been a significant water issue on this block, and the town back in the 90s decided to purchase the property and demolish the building to create a whole new drainage option. But as far as any further improvements, it kind of just sat there. So about 7 years ago, the design committee of Berryville Main Street started to brainstorm what they envisioned for this space. Next slide, please. So the very first part of this project, after we, I should say a former president applied for a community vitality grant. And this is my first point of advice. Do not apply for a grant without your local government being aware of it. That was the first mistake that Berryville Main Street made, is they applied for a grant and the town was caught off guard. So fortunately, we were able to repair that relationship and come on board with them, and they had the funds set aside that they could help on their side of things. So, but it's not our property, you know, it was a town property. So anyway, after we got over that first hurdle, we began the process of working on additional drainage repair that needed to happen in that space again. But for many years, the desire was to bring an element from the old Berryville train station to be a structural element in the alley. And I was able to go to a business who still had a window guard from that train station and acquire it on behalf of this project. It then went to a local welder and needed repair, but is now a main feature in the alley. And they were able to install that as part during the whole time with all the digging they had to do. So there was a period of time where it seemed like nothing was happening, but there was things happening behind the scenes. Next slide, please. So our second phase was the mural phase. And I heard someone, another community share how they are looking forward to having a mural. We were as well. We entitled our call for entries, Fall in Love with Berryville. We wanted it to have a tourism element to it. So we put out a call for entries. We received 6 entries. And this one was our favorite. So as well as the town of Berryville agreed. So the mural project began last spring. And one interesting note was the cow in the middle of our mural. She painted brown. And I happened to be visiting with the mural artist that day. And this older gentleman comes walking down the alley and he just stops and he looks at her and he goes, "That cow is the wrong color." He goes, "You're in Clark County. It needs to be black." She's like, "I can make it black." So it was like we changed the colors, like make it a black cow. So anyway, it's just fun to see how the community interacts with this, and this has become a very important feature of the alley. It's designed to look like a postcard that you sent from visiting, and lots of people enjoy taking photos now in front of that piece. Next slide. So our third phase was preparing the asphalt for the final coat and then installing an interpretive sign, which the town of Berryville took care of for us as far as the designing of the interpretive plaque. And it tells the story of what existed in the space, the history of the space as far as the name of the alley. Hogan's Alley comes from a former town manager. His name was John Hogan. And in the 80s, he started to witness the concern of what was happening to small towns that weren't putting in place some safeguards. There were a number of town council members who also took time to do a lot of research in the community, and I'll share a little bit more about what they came up with, the importance of saving downtowns in a future slide. So anyways, a lot of continued prep work. Next slide, please. So the fourth phase, we learned we felt like we were almost at the finish line. And then we had Rappahannock Electric tell us that we couldn't attach our string lights to their pole because they had slated it for upgrade. And they said it was going to take a year to upgrade this pole. And I said, I'm not usually one that plays a power card, but I did that day. So I contacted our mayor. I said, we need help. They're telling us it's going to take a while for this pole to be upgraded. Can you please call the chairman of the board of Rappahannock Electric? He did that. And within an hour or two, the town was receiving a call that it would be taken care of in the next 2 weeks. And within an hour of that, they said they're coming on Tuesday. I'm like, great, thank you. So it was another example of just in community engagement, of using the resources you have to get accomplished what you need to get accomplished. Next slide, please. So then our fifth step became our stringing overhead lights. Now they're on in the evenings until about 10 o'clock, and they are just stunning at nighttime. It's a really beautiful space. A local electrician installed it, and he was thrilled. I came the first night to see it. He was standing in the alley just smiling. He was just so happy with how beautiful it looked. And he's been a lifelong resident of the community as well. So that feeling of pride of not just a good job done, but adding to the beauty of a space was very meaningful for him. Next slide, please. So the final phase came when the the surface of the alley was painted by a local painting contracting group, and flower boxes were installed, and we hired or we found a local landscaping business to sponsor those planters for this past year. And they just add the final cherry on top of the project. Next slide, please. So the most important probably part of this project was seeing it actually come to a completion. And due to the history of the alley and the amount of time who John Hogan was, as well as the desire of the community to see something done, we knew it was important to have a dedication service. So in November, we held a dedication service on a rainy evening, but it was a very meaningful service. Our town manager came, two of the last surviving town council members came from John Hogan's time period. One of them shared stories as well, but we heard stories from our community in the 80s and 90s of the work of that town council and John Hogan, the town manager, to design an area development plan to safeguard our downtown. The town council had divided themselves up in that time period and visited other localities to see what was happening to those who were allowing strip malls to be built outside of their town. And they were horrified when they realized the impact it was having on this historic brick and mortars downtown. And they knew they did not want that to happen in Berryville. So they worked very hard to develop this Berryville area development plan that our community still observes. And it's a cooperative document between Clark County and the town of Berryville. And still to this day, you cannot build a strip mall on the outside of our town. It's protected. And so recognizing his efforts, he was a very colorful manager. So we heard some funny stories about him as well. But it was a very special evening. And I want to thank Blair for attending with us that evening and honoring this town manager. Next slide. So to recap, this ended up becoming a 2-year project for us due to some of the infrastructure needs that needed to happen. The total cost of the project was just shy of $25,000, which we had a $12,500 grant from the Community Vitality Grant. The town of Berryville put in almost $9,000, and then we covered the rest. Our volunteer time, lots and lots of hours. So at least $4,000 worth of volunteer time went into coordinating this project. Next slide. So the final piece that besides our events and our projects that we work on, we also in our small community really work hard on building community. And often this means partnering with other organizations in our community. But we have the upstairs of where our office is located The front half of it is actually a rentable space that we use as an incubator. And currently, we've had 7 businesses go through the incubator. 5 have successfully moved out into an unoccupied space on Main Street or the historic downtown. And we currently have a massage therapist in there now. We also, this past year, our high school wanted to introduce a homecoming. They always do a homecoming parade, but this year they wanted to do a grad celebration. So that was a new event that we did in partnership with them. And that is something that we enjoy doing, you know, finding ways to collaborate with other organizations or groups in our community. Next slide. So thank you for taking the time to listen as far as what's happening in Berryville. This coming year, we are hoping to add 2 to 3 new events in our community. And we are continuing to kind of build on the blocks of what we already have present. And so there's our contact information. If you would like to be in contact with us, you're welcome to reach out. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Christina. We really appreciate your time today. I know you're a little under the weather, and there's a lot going on up in Northern Virginia right now today. So we appreciate your time and you sharing your experiences. We'd like to offer an opportunity for anyone and everyone on the call to ask some questions of you. Are there any questions for Christina? Feel free to raise your hand or take yourself off mute or type it in the chat. Just about Hogan's Alley, the revitalization project, working with Main Street and our grants. Any questions about building relationships with your municipality? Savannah's typing, maybe she's got something. I also think that the meeting space that you all have in your office is fantastic, in your incubator space. Maybe there are questions about that.
Mm-hmm. I should share that the Hogan's Alley is now a rentable space with the town of Berryville. So it's on the official town application that community residents or businesses or an organization could actually rent it. They could book it and rent it for private use. So.
That is so cool. Kyle, you have your hand raised.
Well, once upon a time, I worked with Berryville Main Street, and so
Yes, you
things have
did, Kyle.
changed since I was there. So I'm curious. I believe the space you're referring to would be the firehouse, right? And at one point or another, the first floor was a gallery that you all managed. I don't believe the gallery is still a thing, but how is that first floor being utilized now? And is that an asset, say, of Berryville Main Street?
It is. So we lease the entire property from the town of Berryville. The first floor holds a retail business. Modern Mercantile moved there, Kyle. So she moved just before COVID hit into that space. So around the time of the embezzlement of the last paid director, the board at the time made the decision to cease the Firehouse Gallery effort due to just not enough income coming in from that endeavor. So it is still retail still on the first floor, and then we actually have 3 sources of income possible from this property. So we pay rent to the town, but they allow us to rent the first floor to retail, rent an incubator, rent a conference room. And what I didn't share is that the town, probably the next project that will impact us the most directly is the town wants to add an outdoor bathroom to our park that's right next door. And that will be on this property where we're located. So I keep advocating, I need a storage room downstairs. We're tired of carrying heavy stuff up and downstairs. You know, we don't have that much room to go in. I'm like, I need a storage room. But there's an old town livery located behind our building, and the town has been saving money for 5 years to save this structure and to do something more with it. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Deidre, you have your hand up?
Yes, I have two questions for you, and you may have already answered the first one. You mentioned your project about adopting a planner to help with the beautification of Berryville. And I was wondering how you went about, I guess, advertising that, and if it was like families or businesses that adopted the planners, like who did you open it up to?
So the planner is actually all of the above. So we first put so if I backtrack a little bit, when I first came back on the board, I knew as a leader that the community needed to know that I cared. So that was actually the first thing I tackled, was trying to show people I cared. Literally go pick up trash, pull weeds, like do the visible things. So when we first put a call out, it went out through our Facebook page. And we probably got about half of them that way, and through the local businesses. But then for that, we have a Facebook page in our community that's just for homesteaders and gardeners.
Oh.
I went to that page and I did a post. And that's where we got the rest of them. And so this past year, there's always been kind of a challenge what to do in the wintertime. It's too cold here to keep annuals going often. But this year we even have our Christmas tree farms allowing us to harvest their greens, and we green up the planters for the wintertime with greenery from Christmas tree farms. So a different board member now takes care of that project. She loves it. The biggest challenge in our community is keeping them watered. It would seem that if they're in front of your business, it would be simple to ask the business owner, can you please keep them watered? But let me tell you, it's not. So we've had volunteers who come into the community, but we didn't lose any this year to drought. I mean, they stayed watered enough. But yeah, that's how we've done it. It's
Okay.
through Facebook.
Okay. And then I had one last question. You mentioned that you have a rentable space. One of the rentable spaces in the building where you guys meet is incubator for new businesses.
Yes.
By incubator, are they just you allowing them to rent the space, or are you providing some type of mentorship support, or do you have like a program for them?
So it's kind of a both. It depends who's been a part of the organization over the years. So to give a little bit more of my personal history, I was the first successful incubating business to go through it in 2014. There had been a business before me that didn't take a space, but I did. So I owned a fair trade gift shop, and I was only in the incubator for 7 months. A space opened up and I took it. Now, that time period, there wasn't a very strong like retail presence in our community. So I was kind of the beginning of a wave of stronger retail businesses coming into Berryville. But now in the way we currently operate, it is reduced rent, and we provide, it depends on what type of business as to who can be a mentor to them.
Okay.
So there's some that almost any business owner can, as far as like your social media presence,
Right.
hours. But when you get like currently we have a service-based business that would not like be my expertise, but there's other business owners that have kind of taken her underneath their wing.
Oh, that's
And
great.
make recommendations. So it operates kind of more, kind of along lines like that. But we haven't normally had a waiting list, but I actually have somebody now waiting to get in that space. And it's a retail business, which is
That's
what we
awesome.
want. So yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions? Savannah, go ahead.
So I have a question in regards to the wall that your mural is on. Um, is that a building that is owned by just a citizen of your community? Is that owned by the town?
That's a great question. No, the town of Berryville does not own the walls of the alley. So part of this project very early on was working with two different property owners, requesting permission to paint a mural and to attach string lights to their structures.
Mhm.
The initial idea for the mural in our community was the original group wanted it to be a standalone mural wall that would be mounted on posts.
Okay.
I was not comfortable with that. In our own community, we've had a mural like that before. It did not last long. In other communities, I've seen them and they just seem to deteriorate faster. So I do not recommend that option. The building that it is on is a local resident who lives here and she operates her law office here. And she was very supportive of us gaining access. Of course, we had to have the proper documentation to proceed.
Right.
But we gained all that, and both of these property owners have been thrilled to be a part of it. So
Mhm. Was there any, my question kind of really goes back to the idea of like an agreement of a time frame or to protect your investment in that mural. Understandably, a property owner could have the potential of wanting to sell. In your documentation, did you put anything in there of like a guaranteed amount of years that you'd be able to utilize that space, or anything regarding time frame for protecting your investment?
that's a great question. No, we did not. But looking back, that's a good idea for future projects. There's a wall that is along 340 that a number of people have said we need to put a mural on that wall, and I'm like, do you realize that property's for sale right now? It's kind of going along with what you're saying. I'm like,
Mhm.
it's probably going to be demolished because it's like a
Mhm.
secondary building. It's not on the main street, and it's like I'm not sure that that's a good idea right now. So that's more what you're speaking to, and yeah, very good point.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I'm going to hand it off to Kyle. Christina, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your expertise. And
Yes, thank you,
Oh,
Christina. I
you're
know that
welcome.
hearing these stories from other communities and the kind of challenges that they've been able to traverse and ultimately coming out on the other side with a successful project that is now an asset for the community is really, it's motivating. So that's really what this time of talking is about, of engagement, is to just kind of hear from you, what inspired you most and how does it connect to your community strengths? So what are some of these ideas that came out of this? Hearing Christina's story that have now fueled some ideas for you. What ideas could be adapted to create positive change in your own Main Street district? Now, this can be broadened a little bit. So maybe you have something that this is maybe you have an idea that's a little different from what Christina just presented, but relates to what we're talking about here in placemaking and even in incubation spaces of starting up, creating a space for new business startups and so forth. So this is really a generative conversation, so it's open. I would love to hear from you guys. We all would. So what inspired you most and how does it connect to your community strengths? What ideas could be adapted to create positive change in your own Main Street district? This is the fun part. I know I've got some of our new mobilizing folks in there. I can just call on you, get you engaged. You're in leadership role now at this point.
So I'll pop in here, Kyle, and just
Oh,
say
Liz, yes. See, I
hi.
was hoping that stoked you.
Yeah,
Good.
no worries. One thing that instantly came to mind was the flea event, and just this idea that it wasn't reinventing the wheel. It's a event that has traction in your community, but just sort of reimagining it, rebranding it, giving it new life, and seeing the success that came out of that. Definitely a take home for me.
Yeah, sometimes, man, that's a strength. If you've already got people that are a critical mass, they're already aware of this event, but yet it's kind of, dwindling in popularity. It may just be reframing it, rebranding it, really kind of looking at what is working, but what can we change in order to make it more successful and refresh it? And it sounds like Berryville did a really good job of doing just that. I mean, doubling your attendance. And I love that it's the street market concept of, really making your district this center of commerce. Even in a temporary situation like this, it helps to really stoke what you guys are aiming to do to really stimulate the economy. So that's fabulous. What else? And heck, this could be an opportunity to share something that's a little out of the box and maybe a little outside what we're talking about. Deidre?
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think the improvements that they made to the alley and the fact that it's now rentable space through, I believe you said either your website or the county. I think that was just very creative. And, we have a small alley here in Toano, and I was just, as she was talking about, I was like, wow, we walked past it and never thought that maybe that was something that we could, improve on, and not only improve on, but use it to generate income. So thank you for sharing that, because now my juices are flowing, and I'm going to go back to our board and talk to them about this little alley that we have. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Deidre. Yeah, I mean, alleys, you might think of this as just a little secondary space, or even really at the bottom of your list. But if designed appropriately and improved, it could become that really cool corridor to draw people from one space to the next, but then also activate it for events and so forth. So awesome. What else do we have? I love to see Sarah Jane's here from Urbana. Urbana's getting their program started right now. Anything, what from this talk that Christina just gave, Sarah Jane, may have maybe stoked some ideas for your startup program right now? Upper right-hand corner is the unmute button. There we go.
Hey, thanks. Sorry, I have never used this Teams that much.
Yeah.
Yes, we're just getting started. We are planning a mural ourselves in Urbana. We held a holiday home tour the past 2 years. We took over that event from another organization called Urbana Beautification, Inc. In fact, we're taking over their 501c3 and sort of merging that. Our missions align very well, and the folks that were involved in that have either passed away or the leadership just wasn't there anymore. And I was involved with that, so we have transitioned that organization to this. We are one of the few towns that actually has a waterfront in Virginia. So and the town was founded in the 1600s and has a very long history. So we have a museum in the streets already, signs that talk about the history, but just expanding on that and signage, trying to get people to, if they haven't been there before, to know where our waterfront is. Urbana is known for the Oyster Festival, but we're a lot more than just the Oyster Festival. So it's a tiny town, only about 400 to 500 people live there year round. So it's challenging, but we have new energy now and are moving forward.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Yeah, they have a really great situation. They applied for a community vitality grant specifically to start up this organization, to create a Main Street program. So along their journey of doing some work planning, figuring out exactly what they need to do, and part of that is creating a 501c3. They started, they came up with this brilliant idea because of the similar missions of this existing organization of just taking it over. So there's efficiencies in that. They're now utilizing that 501c3, repopulating the board, and reprogramming it into Urbana Main Street. Now that's left some additional funds that they can use for building awareness of this new program. So they're rocking and rolling, which is really exciting to see. Thank you, Sarah.
And we had all the legal work was all donated, which I will just encourage everyone. If there's, and I know Clark County has some wonderful volunteer attorneys. I worked at the state bar and led the pro bono program, and Clark County was always a shining star for their pro bono attorneys. But go to the larger firms, even in adjacent towns. This was a Richmond firm that did the work for us, but a friend actually had connections to our town. And larger firms can do legal work for you very easily. They have associates that need the training, and senior partners will oversee things. And that's how our whole 501c3 thing went so smoothly, is because we did have the legal work donated, and a CPA as well in town helped.
Wonderful. Thank you. Michelle.
Good. It's still morning, I guess, almost afternoon.
Oh,
Yes. So I kind of earlier in the conversation someone put in the chat at the town of Wise, the food truck incubator. So that was definitely kind of sparked a little bit of interest in me. We have been talking with the city about commissary kitchens, and so everything's wrapped around commissary kitchens, and we have a great commissary kitchen, but always into restaurants. Let's get brick and mortar, but I love the idea of food truck first, right? So commissary kitchen, then going into a food truck, because it's kind of that step process, right? Like then you can, really test your market to see what kind of bandwidth you have for a brick and mortar restaurant before you're all into the restaurant. So I just thought that was fantastic. We have a great success story that's just happened, not in Portsmouth, but out of Norfolk, but they are Portsmouth residents. They started with a food truck, and they have just purchased and opened a huge brick and mortar where they're doing all their cooking. They've got 3 locations throughout Hampton Roads, but they started with a food truck. And for their grand opening, they had people waiting in line at 1 o'clock in the morning, camping out for their grand opening. Which is, again, not Portsmouth, but that just kind of reiterated that whole, for me, that food truck piece, right? And so take that commissary kitchen and then to a food truck, just step up, like stepping them into the right direction.
absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. I'm glad that you picked up on that too. I mean, we're hearing how Main Street can be used to help create new businesses. Well, Christina and Berryville Main Street having their incubator space where a little retail business can first tinker with putting it all together, hopefully move into a storefront eventually. Same with Michelle's story about the food trucks. Hopefully they can move into a permanent storefront at some point within your district. And then even if you don't provide those services as a fledgling Main Street organization or just a small one in general, you can still help connect them to the resources that they need in order to grow and contribute to your local economy. So Michelle, thanks for pointing that out. That was great. It's about 10 till, so we have maybe time for one more. Anybody else have something inspiring or something inspiring that's helped happen within your program or district that you're just burning to share? Your coffee wore off, huh? That caffeine is just sort of fading away. All right. Well, thank you all for taking in this and chatting. This is great to hear these stories. I know it inspires me to learn more about what each of you have going on, and to, as a network, to support each other in this way just makes it that much easier for us to be successful and be able to share some of these success stories. So coming up, boy, we've got a big one on February 4th. Virginia Main Street's 40th anniversary reception is here in Richmond. So, oh gosh, we're so excited about that. Registration's closed, but if you have interest in coming, I'm sure we can figure out how to get you in there. It's heavy hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and hearing from keynote speaker, and celebrating with some really cool swag, and connecting with each other. So really, please, there's still an opportunity if you're interested in going. April 6th through 9th is Main Street Now. So that is the National Main Street Center's national conference, and that's in Philadelphia. Just an easy train ride up from Richmond. Don't worry about that car. Just get yourself up there and sit back and put your feet up. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's always a wonderful affair. There's something to learn, even if you're, a tenured Main Streeter. April 25th, the Virginia Main Street grant application deadline, so keep that in mind. Reach out to your program administrator and chat up some ideas. We want to help line up some really powerful projects. So now's the time to throw out your ideas to us, and we can help you craft and align it with the grant and make sure that you are coming up with a competitive application. And then our spring rev-ups. This is really cool. I love that we're talking about spring, by the way, with more sunshine and longer days. I'm feeling it. It's coming. So the spring rev-ups are in Gloucester, Harrisonburg, and Marion. So that's in about the second week in May. And this is going to be focused on your leadership within your nonprofit organization and helping them to be impactful and engaged. So look out for more information about that and mark your calendars. But you can check out the full training calendar by this hyperlink here, and visit our virginiamainstreet.com blog. That's where the intersections of information can be found. All right. And then any final thoughts? This is just the next slide is really, hey, anything. What can we do to clarify, help you reach a deeper level of understanding about Main Street, or, anything that we've discussed? This is a catch-all. Last chance. All right, so you guys have heard enough, and I'm sure tummies are rumbling. I can attest to that. So is Courtney closing out? What do we have here?
Am I closing
Am
out?
I? I don't know.
Well, it's good to see all of your shiny, happy faces. We look forward to seeing you at the next training, and 2025 is going to be a great year for Main Street in Virginia. We'll see you at the next one.
Thank you, everybody.